because it's been so discredited and so forth.
But you in fact contributed to the discrediting, didn't you? Quite
Yeah,
deliberately.
Deliberately, yes. So I really want to get rid of it. There's a sort of unnecessary adoration of art today, which I find unnecessary. And I think, I don't know, but this is a difficult position because I've been in it all the time and still want to get rid of it.
Marcel Duchamp was described by Robert Motherwell as the guy who always wore a pink shirt, smoked Havana cigars nonstop, was somewhat of a hermit, and did not go to exhibitions or museums. Duchamp is one of the 20th century's pioneer artists and participated as a writer, painter, and sculptor in many modern art movements. As stated by Alice Goldfarb-Marquis, Duchamp can be identified as the inspiration for a horde of artists trying to make their mark in an overcrowded field. Marcel was born on July 28, 1887 in Blainville, France, into an artistic family. He began painting in 1902 at the age of 15. He studied at both the École Bossuet in Rouen and the Académie Julian in Paris. After his studies, he started to paint in a post-impressionist manner. It wasn't until 1910 that his most important early works were created. This was also the same year he met Francis Picabia. Picabia was able to show Duchamp a whole new world. Duchamp stated in 1960 that the 4 years since their meeting was an explosion for us. We were rather like the two poles, if you like, each one adding something and exploding the idea by the fact that there were two poles. At the start of their relationship, he began to paint in relation to Cubism. It was in 1912 when he produced one of his most famous paintings, The Nude Descending a Staircase. In 1915, Duchamp would meet another man that would greatly influence him, Man Ray. The two met in New Jersey and would later found the Society of Independent Artists. Man Ray seemed to be the perfect partner for Duchamp in all of his eccentricities. Although Duchamp, Man Ray, and Picabia never directly worked together, they can be considered the unholy trinity, with Duchamp the central figure.
This was a friendship, and a very unusual friendship, but an also fertile one, which was to spread and reverberate throughout modern art. It was a friendship that was to last for more than 50 years.
After moving away from Paris for a while, Duchamp moved back in 1919. He linked up with Picabia and introduced him to André Breton, the figurehead of the spirit of Dada in Paris. Duchamp stated that Dada was an extreme protest against the physical side of painting. It was a metaphysical attitude. It was intimately and consciously involved with literature. It was a sort of nihilism to which I am still very sympathetic. It was a way to get out of a state of mind, to avoid being influenced by one's immediate environment or by the past, to get away from cliches, to get free. In 1919, he executed LHOOQ, Mona Lisa with the mustache, which later became an icon for the Dada movement. Duchamp's female pseudonym, Rose Salavie, first appeared in the spring of 1921. Man Ray photographed the photo of Duchamp dressed as the female artist. However, Duchamp retouched the photo to emphasize her femininity. The photo was later turned into a label and used to make a pun of a perfume called Bella Hallien. The photo also appeared on the cover of the only issue of the New York Dada magazine. Duchamp started to abandon the conventional forms of painting and drawing and develop artwork based on the ideas of metaphysics. It is said that he gave up painting altogether by 1918. Alice Goldfarb-Marquis states that he claimed to have created nothing substantial for decades and was now considered a virtue. His apparent indifference and withdrawal from making any art at all was viewed as a noble gesture, a protest against the treatment of art as a commodity. It was at this time that he started to create what are known as ready-mades. As stated by Bernard Marsad, the invention of the ready-made was a crucial influence on the works of the American artist. Duchamp's ready-mades were made from mundane objects of everyday life, whose purpose was to function and make life livable. Some of his ready-mades included a hat rack suspended from the ceiling, a coat rack nailed to the floor, and what we recognize most, his piece titled Fountain. Duchamp stated that he is enormously lazy and likes living and breathing better than working. He resisted the labor of housework and used his productions to emphasize the lack of a divide between work and leisure by making them inoperable. Helen Molesworth says, "The ready-made has done more to reorganize aesthetic categories than any other 20th century art practice. The ready-mades also offer humor, slapstick and play, and modes of experience that gesture toward a different set of possibilities for how we might conceive of the everyday." The concept of the mass-produced ready-made was adopted by Andy Warhol and other pop artists. It also inspired Fluxus and performance artists with its performativity aspects. Even though the concepts of his ready-mades highly influenced performance artists, he also took part in performance art. In 1924, Duchamp and Man Ray appeared in one of René Clair's films, Entr'acte, which was shown during the intermission of one of Paccabi's ballets, Relâche. Ironically, the word relâche is a French word used on posters to indicate that a show is cancelled. In this film, Duchamp and Man Ray are playing chess, Duchamp's favorite game, on the roof of a theater. In 1926, Duchamp created a film titled Animex Cinema with Man Ray and Marc Allegre. The animated drawings shown in the film are what Duchamp calls roto-reliefs. They are made from colored cardboard discs, which when set revolving seem to lure the eye down endless tunnels of space. Throughout Duchamp's career, he did not want boundaries like other art movements established. He opened the door to new art featuring unusual materials such as feces, urine, and other bodily fluids. He also created art with aggressively sexual themes. He took big steps outside the box of the art world. Instead of wanting to impose a new revolutionary language, he wanted to propose an attitude of mind. He moved his artwork into a field where language, thought, and vision act upon one another. He insisted that art should be an expression of the mind rather than the eye or the hand, which spoke to both minimalists and conceptual artists. He also stated that, in the creative act, the artist goes from intention to realization through a chain of totally subjective reactions. His struggle toward the realization is a series of efforts, pains, satisfactions, refusals, decisions, which also cannot and must not be fully self-conscious. In 1955, at the age of 68, Duchamp finally became an American citizen. 13 years later, on October 1st, Duchamp died suddenly in his studio in Neuilly, France. Man Ray was one of the last people to visit him before his death. A year after Duchamp's death, Arturo Schwartz pulled what he thought was all of Duchamp's work together in a book titled Complete Works of Marcel Duchamp. The first copy listed 421 items, but was later revised listing 663 items. Alice Goldfarb-Marquis states, "Nevertheless, the artist himself, stripped bare of elaborate scholarly apparatus, continues to tantalize, to challenge, to amuse, to trouble, and, yes, to irritate an increasing number of artists, teachers, and students."
When I start to work, I turn off all the lights and I turn on all the equipment. Projectors, tape decks, electronics, and I just play, really. I mean, it sounds moronic, but it is. You know, I try to sometimes be extremely rigid in. I try to figure out what it is that I'm doing, and sometimes I try to be completely, well, innocent. You know, just see what these things do, and try anything. Or sometimes I try to make the dumbest work that I can think of, and that sometimes turns out to be the best. Hello? Hello? Boy, this is really strange to sort of talking to myself like this. Is anyone there? Hello?
Laurie Anderson is one of today's prominent performers. She is known for her multimedia presentations and casting herself in her own performances. She is an American performance artist, composer, and musician who plays the violin and keyboard along with singing a variety of music. Anderson was born June 5, 1947 in Wayne, Illinois. She was one of 8 children. Anderson enjoyed studying the violin and played very often. She attended school at the Barnard College in New York studying art history, graduating in 1969. After college, she went on to work toward a graduate degree in sculpture at Columbia University. Her first performance art piece was in 1969. It was a symphony played on automobile horns. During the early 1970s, Anderson found inspiration in downtown New York among the many young artists. One of her earlier performances took place on the streets, Duets on Ice, where she stood on a block of ice, playing her violin while wearing ice skates. When the ice was completely melted, the performance was over. After a year teaching art history and Egyptian architecture at City College, Anderson's career as a public performer took off. By 1976, Laurie Anderson was performing regularly in museums, concert halls, and art festivals throughout North America and Europe. Claiming to base all of her projects on the power of words and language, her work also emphasized visual imagery and cutting-edge technology. Laurie Anderson used the combination of sound and text to create her work. Communication with her audience was her goal from the start. Anderson wanted to immediately make a personal connection with her listeners. She did not want to shock her audience, but instead stir them up. Without being the least bit patronizing, she merges an intense cultural and political critique with music and visual art and performances that can be read by a wide gamut of viewers. From language theorists and cultural critics to general theater and rock music audiences, language was how she transported her ideas the most. She intends the viewer pay attention to the way things pull at each other, to what she describes as the audio and visual layering of each piece. She makes no effort to disguise her many sources of inspiration. Her work was a way of storytelling, similar to the world's most ancient art form. Her great moral themes were love, family, and community. In 1981, Anderson became more widely known outside of the art world with her single, "Oh Superman." "Oh Superman" was an 8-minute song that reached the number 2 spot on the British pop charts in 1981, in which the popularity of the song took her by surprise. In 1982, Anderson signed contract with Warner Brothers to produce 6 albums for their label.
Oh, Superman. Oh, George. Oh, Mom and Dad. Mom and Dad. Oh, Superman. Oh, George. Oh, Mom and Dad. Mom and Dad. Hi. I'm not home right now, but if you want to leave a message, just start talking at the sound of the tone. Hello? This is your mother. Are you there? Are you coming home? Hello? Is anybody home? Well, you don't know me, but I know you, and I got a message to give to you. Here come the plane.
In 1986, she starred in and directed the concert film Home of the Brave, and also composed the soundtracks for Spalding Gray films Swimming to Cambodia and Monster in a... Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, Anderson has gone on to create a memorable career producing multiple performances. She voice acted in the animated film The Rugrats Movie, and in 2001 produced Life on a String, by which she signed a new contract with another Warner Music label. Life on a String with a combination of new works and works from Moby Dick. In 2001, she went on tour performing a selection of her best-known musical pieces and performed shortly after the September 11th attacks. She assisted in creating the opening ceremony for the 2004 Olympic Games in Athens. In 2007, Laurie Anderson was awarded the Gish Prize for her outstanding body of work and contribution to mankind's understanding of life. In 2010, Anderson premiered a new theatrical work at the Vancouver 2010 Olympic Games. Her work today has been featured on So You Think You Can Dance and on The Late Show with David Letterman. She is currently working on a new piece called Another Day in America.
could not foresee this thing happening to you. If I look hard enough into the setting sun, my love will laugh with me before the morning comes. I see a red door and I want to